What is going on? I don't know, guys. Welcome, welcome. Uh, this has been kind of a crazy morning. Welcome to the morning haze. No idea what happened this morning. Let me get these links out so people know where we're at. I I don't even know what to say. I don't even know what to say because there isn't anything to say. Um, I don't know what Ecamm was doing this morning or last night for that matter. No idea at all. I hope everybody's getting this. I hope. Um, if you are, let me know. Um, because I have no idea. What a crazy. Okay, now I see the live chat. All right, now I'll pick it up. All right, here we go. Pop out the chat. There we go. Now I've got it. Now it's good. All right, now we can start the show. Welcome to the Morning Haze. I am Josh Hayes here on Keystroke Medium. We're live, finally. Not exactly sure what happened with Ecamm and my broadcast there. It all was flowing great. It all was okay, and then the link didn't go where it should have gone, and I'm not sure where it went. It was out in the ether somewhere, and I'm not exactly sure why it was like that or where it went. So now we're here. So welcome everybody, and thanks for joining. I after having such a phenomenal writing day today, um, to have all these technical difficulties on the morning show is just kind of frustrating. And now I'm all like discombobulated. But I'm glad that we're finally here. I hope everybody will filter in over to the new stream and hang out with me, even though it's like 15 minutes past. So I apologize for that. Yeah, Ario Ochoa says it's definitely Skynet this morning. I don't know what it was. It was definitely Skynet. I didn't even know it was August. That's a Terminator reference. So, welcome everybody that's here, and we'll go ahead and get started with this episode of the Morning Haze. We're talking about the top 5 author podcasts that I like to listen to. A little update on me before we get into that. It's Mega Monday, and for those of you that don't know what Mega Monday is, I'm part of a collective of writers that, for the most part, Monday is our biggest writing day for the collective. I'm off. Scott Moon's off. Nathan Heisted's part of the collective. He's full time. Uh, and then of course Devin C. Ford and a couple other people, Chuck and Ralph, and we just like to slam words out on Monday. And we're actually tracking for the year where our collective words are at. The last time I checked, we were over five. It's over 500, or it's almost 500,000 words for the year for the collective, and it's only what, the 11th of February. So for me personally, I am at as well before starting my writing today, I was at 14,933. So I got about, what did I get today? 35. I'm at about 4,700 words today, which is probably why the internet was screwing with me for this whole thing. It was like, you're almost 5,000 words today. You don't need to do anything else. We'll screw with your computer all day. So I am almost at 5,000 words today. I actually doubled my, almost doubled my goal for my ghostwriting project early this morning. I got up like I normally do at 4 and started writing and working on the ghostwriting project and got about 3,500, just a little over 3,500 words on that project this morning. And then I'm transferred over to Terra Nova 4 now after breakfast, and I'm at about 1,200 words for Terra Nova 4. So going really well today. The Terra Nova words started out kind of slow, but then they picked up as I was going. It was kind of fun today. I've been doing a little Instagram storying, which I think carries over to Facebook as well. And so I've been checking in every hour, kind of giving some updates on where I'm at, and just sharing kind of my day with you, which I thought was kind of cool. And if people don't like it, then it is what it is. Watch or don't. Nathan is in the chat. He says we're at 581,000 for the collective this year. 581,000 words over. Oh, I don't even know how many people are in the collective right now. 7 or 8. They come and go sometimes, and some do more than others. Looking at you, Ralph, and it's fun. It's good times. So, Cracked Neurons is back in the chat. Welcome, welcome. Ellis S says that's such a cool idea. It was a cool idea, and I'm gonna stand up on my soapbox and say it was my idea, but it is what it is. Let's see. Chuck says, "Is it just me, or does his desk setup look like something like a radio broadcaster in a zombie apocalypse who keeps broadcasting with no idea whether anyone's listening or not?" Yes, this is the studio of the apocalypse. Matter of fact, I'm going to get a sign made. I'm going to get a plaque. Apocalypse soundstage. I like that. So yeah, that's me today. Doing a lot more writing. I've got to go get my car registered later on today instead of the DMV. I'm not really thrilled about that. I'm not at all. Luckily for us, here in Wichita, we have kind of like call ahead seating, so I can like get in line, and I don't have to actually go sit at the DMV for like 5 hours. I can get in line digitally, and then they'll send me a text like, "You have 15 minutes," and I'm like, "Ah, crap, I'm late. Gotta go." So Ariel Ochoa asks, "How did you join this writing collective?" Well, actually, it started out as it started out as sci-fi explorations, and during the time when Nathan was putting on the explorations anthology series, we got a whole bunch of people together and decided we were going to start sci-fi explorations, the newsletter, and then um, kind of the collective grew out of that. And that was one of my predictions way back in whenever we started at 2015, I think. 2000, so probably the end of 2015, beginning of 2016, when I said collectives were going to become a big thing, and they actually have been. And our collective's been around for a while, and we've had a lot of success through it. And it's just a lot of fun to hang out. I definitely recommend starting, just a. And ours is just basically a Facebook Messenger group that blows up all day long, and it gets to the point sometimes where we've got to mute the mute the collective because it's just all day long, people typing and chatting back and forth, and we talk about more than writing, but it's fun. So if you haven't started one of those, or if you'd like to, definitely do that. I mean, it's just easiest setting up a messenger group and inviting some people that like to write to it, and they do some sprinting every once and like every morning they'll get together and start a timer and do like 30-minute sprints together, so it's fun. I usually don't do the sprints because I get distracted really easily, and so I just have to sit down and like laser beam focus on what I'm doing. Otherwise, I'll get caught up in the internet. So, okay, so let's talk about my top 5 podcasts. It really irritates me because I had these overlays like ready to go, and Ecamm decided to give me the finger. So I can't give the overlays. Oh, but I could open them up on this monitor back here and you might be able to see them. Let's see. Let's see. The first one I'm going to talk about is, let's see, random order, random order. Um, we'll go with this one. We'll go with this is no particular order. These are just my top 5. I don't have like a one my favorites, just my top 5. So put this over here. I wonder if you guys can see it. Probably not though. Let's see. Can you see that? Probably not. It's probably not bright enough. Well, that's kind of hard to see, but that is the Author Stories podcast logo. If you can't see it, I can see it just fine when on the transmission. It's not. The Author Stories podcast by Hank Garner. There are over 500 episodes in the Author Stories podcast, and what I like about his podcast is that where a lot of podcasts and shows, including ourselves, we dive a lot into craft and really dive deep and go kind of micro level on writing and genre and character and all that stuff that writers are interested in. And what Hank does is really kind of focus on what makes that author tick. Like, what has that author gone through? What is their life experience? Uh, what what has brought them to the point now where they are writing and developing stories, and it's very cool because you know you go he always takes authors back to like the very beginning, and even before they decided to become a writer, but the very beginning of what made you want to be a storyteller. I love his first question, and that a lot of times will take authors down a really neat rabbit hole, and you get to learn a lot about the writer and a lot about what caused them to write the genre of the books that they chose to write. And so I really like that a lot. If you haven't listened to it, I'll put a link in the show notes. I had it all set up, man, and now it's all gone. So I've got to redo it again. But the link will be in the show notes for the Author Stories podcast. Check it out. Hank Garner's a really nice guy. He's a friend of the show. He's a really good writer, and he nails it. Nails it. He's had some really cool guests on his show. Um, I mean, some New York Times bestsellers, some really, really like just up and top notch writers. Jim Butcher, Brandon Sanderson, Brad Thor. Who's the guy that writes the Longmire series? His name's escaping me. Um, but yeah, check out the author stories. Great show. I'll put a link in it. Let's see. I wonder if you can if it's even. There goes my coffee. Let's see. We'll talk about this one next. This is one that I just found. Um, this one might show up a little better. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But I tried. I tried at least. That's all that counts. It shows up a little better. Might be backwards. It's the Speculative Work podcast by James S. Aaron. It's a relatively new podcast. I think it's only on 10 or 11 episodes now. But he does a really good job at like uh, breaking down his discussion topics. It's just him. It's as of right now, I don't think that he's had any guests on. I've listened to several of his shows, and he he actually I took my updates that I do at the beginning of the show or try to do, and if I don't forget about how many word counts I've what my word count is at. Yeah, Craig Johnson. There you go. Thanks, Ariel, of Longmire. He breaks down his word counts for the month, his goals, like what his projects are looking like, because he does co-writing with Michael Cooper, and so they do a podcast over there with Aeon 14, and then he talks about his writing, and really kind of breaks down his experience in a very articulate and interesting way. Um, like I said, he's I don't know that he's new to podcasting, but the show is new, and so, um, I think he's got 10 or 11 episodes out. He dealt with, traditional indie publishing, podcasts. He's gone over several topics um they're not new topics, but they're his take on them, and I think his take's really cool, and it adds something to the discussion. So if you haven't found it yet, and you're looking for some podcasts to add into your lineup, check out Speculative Work by James S. Aaron. Very cool podcast. Let's see. Oh, also he did an interview one time with the Keystro Cat, so that was cool. Let's see. What is the next one? We'll go with this one. And this is kind of a oh, come on now. Come on. This is kind of I've got kind of a love-hate relationship with this next podcast. This is the Writing Excuses podcast. Brandon Sanderson, Mary Robinette Caldwell, Dan Wells. They are on season 14. And if you're a writer who's really um, looking at what the pros are doing, and by pros I mean the people that are really kind of in the forefront of publishing, even in traditional publishing, like Brandon Sanderson and Dan Wells are obviously two big names. They do themed seasons, And so season 14 is world building, and so they're doing a lot of episodes on world building around the different aspects of that um, um form of creation. And they focus, like they've done a character one, they've done plot types, they've done archetype ones, and they've got a lot of good episodes. Um, some of their little rabbit holes, rabbit trails they take down are uh, less interesting than others. I'll be nice. Um, but for the most part, I do like their podcast, and I try to listen to it every week. Actually, William Tyler Davis says I get a lot more out of Sanderson's class videos, and his videos are really good. His latest session, I think it was his latest session, is if you search Camera Panda, which is weird, Camera Panda on YouTube, you'll get his latest semester class at Brigham Young University, where he teaches writing science fiction and fantasy. And his YouTube shows, well, it's not really a show, but his YouTube broadcasts about the writing craft are very cool, because not only are you hearing him talk, but then he breaks it down visually on a whiteboard and kind of writes things out. So you can see and kind of get a visual picture of what he's trying to convey. And I think that's really cool. So if you haven't checked those out, go look at that and then listen to the Writing Excuses podcast. Let's see. The next one is it used to be the self-publishing podcast. This is now the Story Studio. And it's done by Sean Platt and um, Johnny B. Truant and David Wright, David W. Wright. They have written a lot of fiction, a lot of books. They've done the Smarter Artist um, Summit down in Austin. I think the last one's actually happening this year, but they're transitioning kind of from uh, a writer centric company to a reader book centric company, if that's the easiest way to put it. So I think they're turning their focus away from kind of the nonfiction aspect of their podcast, and turning it towards creative, and turning it towards really focusing on writing good fiction. And um, so they've changed the way their podcast works, and now they really kind of talk about story in general. So they'll break down movies or TV shows or different things, and it's it's interesting to listen to them talk. Some of the episodes are better than others. Some of they've been going for a long time, so a lot of their jokes are like callback jokes, and some of their humor is a little off. But they have some really good nuggets, and I like when they break down movies in particular, because a lot of the movies I've seen, and then watching them break it down and thinking about movies like critically that way is really interesting. And I've actually thought about doing it a couple times for several movies that I've watched that I think are, from a story aspect, are like really complete. And so that I got that idea from them, and that way of thinking about story from them. So I might do a couple videos on breaking down some movies, and then um, discussing the story structure of those movies, and how they were good or how they were bad. So I think that's really cool to break down stories like that, because it's easier than reading a novel. Um, and and everybody, whether you're a writer or not, has seen the movies, so you can break those down and look at the story. So Story Studio podcast is in my top 5 still. Okay, the last one I have is not technically a writer podcast, but it applies. So uh, you might be able to see that, might be able to not see it. The reason this is not technically a writer podcast is that um, it's made for entrepreneurs, um, and he's very business minded. But so this is the Gary V audio experience. Sorry, and I listen to this podcast almost all the time. Like if I'm not listening to an audiobook, I've got Gary's podcast on. I got his book, Crushing It, which is specifically focused for entrepreneurs, but it also applies to any type of business. And so, in self-publishing, in indie publishing, doing what most of us in Keystroke are doing, which is running a business, this guy is one of the smartest people I know. And he not only is he smart about business, but he's very motivating and inspirational in the way that he talks. And so he he gives I mean, he just gives his information out for free. Like, this is how you need to operate to grow your business and to make $1 million. But his whole spiel is something that I take to heart is if you're in any type of business to make money to buy, let's just say a Porsche, and that's your goal is to buy the Porsche, then you need to think really heavily about what you're doing because his goal is the process. And so, like that really he's his whole thing is he wants to buy the New York Jets, but that's like a way far goal that probably is not attainable, even to him. But he's going to work towards that goal anyway. But it's the process that drives him. And so that really kind of when I started thinking about going full time, which tomorrow I officially retire, and I will be just a full time author. When I started going about the process of getting set up and feeling kind of figuring out what I needed to go full time, I looked at um, what am I trying to do? And yes, I want to be a full-time writer, but a full-time writer is not making $1 million. A full-time writer is making what you need to eat, like I said last week, or in the episode where I talked about diversifying your writing income. And so for Gary, uh, his whole thing is the process. I mean, he builds businesses and he sells them and he starts over and he loves it when he loses. He loves it when he fails because then he can start over and do it again. And he's not afraid of failing. He doesn't listen to the haters. He doesn't listen to the negative comments. He just does what he knows he wants to do. And if it works, great. If it doesn't work, then he learned from it and he moved on. And I really appreciate and can really kind of grab on to that idea of it's okay to fail. You're going to fail. Just do. Just go and do. And that's kind of like what uh, what I do for Keystroke and for the people that are part of the company that they have this idea and I'm like, yep, let's do it. Let's just do it. I mean, I'm not going to weigh the consequences of if we do this, will it do this? Or if we do that, will it take away from that? No, if it sounds like a good idea and I think it's going to bring value, then let's do it. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And I think that that's really a cool idea to kind of ground yourself in, especially in this career field for writing. I mean, you write a book series and it doesn't work, it fails, for lack of a better word, then fine, start a new one, do something different, write a different series, choose a different genre. I mean, Richard Fox has said several times, he's my collaborator on the Terra Nova project, that when he started out writing, he was writing military thrillers and alternate history books, and they were not selling at all. And he was on the verge of giving up. He was on the verge of having to get a job. And somebody told him, well, what genre do you like reading in? And he said, well, military sci fi. And he said, well, why don't you write a military sci fi book? And he did. And now you have the Ember War and the Iron Dragoons and the Terran Strike Marines and Terra Nova. And he's just very, very, very successful. And so that's that failing is all part of it. And it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. Um, and I think some people kind of get lost on that, especially in indie writing, where you can just publish a book and it's published and it's out there. And then when it doesn't sell, the author may just look at it and say, well, people just don't get it, and just continue to hump on um, putting out books in that series that's not selling and thinking, well, one day it's going to take off. Well, maybe it won't. And that's okay. Write something else, do something different, choose a different genre. And write until something hits. And then when it hits, just follow that train, follow that gravy train, and do what you need to do, and do what you want to do. Um, uh, so that those are my top 5 podcasts, and that's the reason I like listening to them. I'm gonna scroll through the live chat here and see if there are any questions. And yes, consistently, Christy, all the podcasts will be in um, the show notes. I don't know why I drew a blank there. Um, let's see. Hey, Gorilla in Future, glad you made the show. Uh, so Gary Vee will help me buy my land and build my house. Is his YouTube content the same as podcast? Um, Consistently, Christy has a really good question about Gary Vee. Gary Vee's podcast and his YouTube channel and his Instagram, you're going to get everything. And what's interesting about Gary Vee is that he has somebody videotaping him almost 24 hours a day, and his all his meetings, all his shows, everything that he does that's not like super private or like going to the bathroom, somebody videotapes him and he's mic'd up. And so almost all of that makes it to the podcast and to the video show. And so there are some podcasts that episodes that last for 5 minutes. There's some podcast episodes that last for half an hour. There's some that go for like an hour and a half. Um, and it just varies. And it's it's not a regimented like this show or live or the writer's journey where it's all really structured, and this is the time and date it's going to be on. The Gary V audio experience is always getting episodes. Every day they get episodes, and every day they put out content on Instagram and YouTube, and it's just a massive thing to digest. But I definitely recommend people taking a look at that, especially even if it's just to get motivation to push further or push harder on your personal brand as a writer. I mean, I learned something last night that I thought was just amazing, and it was how to grow your Instagram, um, how to grow your Instagram reach, and how to do marketing on Instagram that's free, and it's basically just um, going to your hashtags. Like for instance, for me, I went to the am writing hashtag, and you can search it by hashtag. And then I just started scrolling through and looking at the posts in that hashtag cluster, and then commenting on people's stuff and liking it, and just going through for like an hour commenting and liking on their stuff. And I pulled like 3 or 4 or 5 follows off of that, and engaged with several people, and I thought that was really cool. And it was quick, it was fast, it was I didn't have to spend any money, so that was awesome. I don't want to spend a whole lot of money that I don't need to. Let's see. Let me scroll through here and see if there's any more questions. Chuck asked if they were still doing the self-publishing podcast, which they are. It's basically the same thing. It's just called Story Studio. Let's see. And I agree, Tyler. The 15-minute segments on the podcast are kind of short, and a lot of times I think they stifle their conversation by keeping it that short, because sometimes they get going on and we're talking about writing excuses now, but sometimes they get going on talking about their process and their craft, and then they're like, well, we're 15 minutes or 20 minutes or however long, and they cut it. They cut it short, and I'm like, no, you were having a good conversation about that. Okay, that's about it, guys. I I know I went like 40 minutes the last time we were on the show, and I don't, for some reason my timer is not showing up here on my where it normally shows up at. It's very weird. This whole day, this whole morning, but um, cool thing. I don't know if you can see this, but my this is my new ergonomic mouse. Instead of being like, it would be like this if it was flat, it's like this, it's like straight up and down. That has helped me significantly this week on writing, and helping my wrists not be as painful. I've been having some really, I don't know, my wrists are just kind of sore, and obviously I've still got that tingling in my feelings, but it's helping a lot, and doing some voice dictations helping a lot. So maybe on Wednesdays or Friday, I'll do a little show where I kind of go through my dictation process on Terra Nova 4 and walk through it and see if people are interested in seeing that. We'll do that. So yeah, a couple of people saying they have a mouse like that. And it was super cheap. It was like 14 bucks on Amazon, and I got it in like 2 days. And it takes a little bit of getting used to moving it around, but I think in the long term it's gonna work out. So yeah, that's about it, guys. Thank you guys for coming and hanging out with me this morning. It's again, I apologize for having the technical difficulties that I had this morning. I don't know. Ecamm is such a nice program. It's such a nice layout, and I like being able to do the overlays and like being able to do the music. But it's going to give me fits. Then maybe we'll just stick to the good old fashioned YouTube Hangouts and go from there. Man, we've got 20 people watching this morning. Maybe lunchtime is the better time to do it. It also gives me a little bit more time to get my main writing done during the day. So all right. Well, we've been going for about half an hour, I think, so we'll cut it here. And yes, don't forget, like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed yet. When you subscribe, hit that little notification bell, and then you'll get notified when we go live. This like the 8 times we went live today. But follow the show, and then if you're watching and viewing the show and subscribed on YouTube, come check us out on Facebook. Just Google or just type in Keystroke Medium on Facebook, or the link is in the show notes as well. Join the group. You can follow the page. The group has a lot of shenanigans that happen, a lot more than the live chat. And there's a lot of good things that happen in that group that you might miss if you didn't know about it. So Facebook is just search Keystroke Medium. We're the only one there. And it's a good time. So thank you guys for watching. Like I said, don't forget to like and subscribe. Share this around. Let people know about the show. Share it on your Facebook feeds and your Instagrams and your YouTubes and Twitters and all that, and bring some eyes onto the show, and let's get some people engaged. So thank you guys, and I hope you have a fantastic Monday. We'll be live tonight at 8 p.m. For a roundtable, which I still don't know what the discussion is, which is crazy because we're hosting the show in less than 9 hours, and we still don't have a conversation topic yet. So maybe I'll put a poll in the Facebook group, and we can talk about what we want to talk about. We can vote on what we want to talk about tonight. So until tonight, I will talk to you guys later. Thanks for hanging out with me on this episode of the Morning Haze, and we'll see you next time. Bye.